everyone, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Today we've got some pretty big news for you guys, and some pretty big news for the community as a whole, and this is regarding the adjustments that Mihoyo has recently announced. I believe the notes came out this morning, posted December 19th, 2020 over here, and our Zhongli finally got buffs. Now, if you saw our video we put out a little bit ago, it was talking about potential solutions for Zhongli, where we gave you an overview of his problems and some of the ways we could help fix those problems. And here is Mihoyo's official statement regarding Zhongli and some buffs that they have planned for him, as well as some buffs for the Geo Element as a whole. So this first paragraph here is just addressing us, the travelers, and letting us know that they are looking at Zhongli, they put him in the 1.3 beta, they're going over some tentative changes for him right now, and that's what we're going to be covering in this video. At the end, if you enjoyed, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. So the first change, and these are all current adjustments, they're not final, so that's just a quick disclaimer. This first change is regarding Zhongli as a character, so adjustments to the passive talent Dominance of Earth. And for those of you who don't know or don't have him, Dominance of Earth is his Ascension 4 talent, so when you get Ascension 4, he just automatically gets this. The original effect was increasing Planet Befall, which is his ultimate, damage by an amount equal to 33% of Zhongli's max HP. So after these changes, the damage dealt by Zhongli's attacks will be increased based on his max HP. Normal, charge, and plunging attack damage will be increased by 1.39% of max HP. And now this is one of the changes that we had mentioned in our Zhongli Solutions video, where we said he needs consistent scaling. We can't be trying to build him with HP, attack, and geo damage, so just give him one scaling that works on all of his abilities. And now, although this is just a small percentage of his max HP, it's still a nice little bonus that makes it so that if you are going for an HP build, it's not completely wasted on his auto attacks, which I think is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, for the most part I agree. As we'll see in the later parts of this video, this is probably one of the smaller changes, because ultimately we believe Zhongli is really designed to be kind of a geo support. Sure, the damage definitely helps, but there are much more impactful changes coming up, and let's get right to that on the next paragraph here.
Right, so along with the max HP changes on his auto attacks, there's also another change that's tied to his Ascension 4, and that is the Stone Steel, or Pillar as we'll be calling it for the rest of this video. The resonance and holding mode damage of Dominus Lapidus will be increased by 1.9% of max HP. And so this is just another one of those examples, because before only the shield would scale off max HP, and so building HP on him, you lose out on a lot of damage, but now with this 1.9% max HP scaling, you're getting some of that damage back. It might not seem like enough if you're looking at Zhongli in a vacuum, but let's keep in mind, Geo characters, I think they're moving in a direction where they want them to be more self-sufficient or to be used in Geo-centric teams, because if you look at the common combination that a lot of people have been pulling off, Ningguang Zhongli or Geo MCN Zhongli, they can all create constructs, and each of those constructs can resonate with the pillar, which means every tick is going to be doing roughly 2% of Zhongli's max HP. And when you consider that, it's actually a pretty sizable buff, and if used in the right combination, we think this damage could end up scaling pretty well.
And yeah, I think that's exactly the point. I think up until now, the biggest issue with the Geo Element is the fact that as a standalone element in the game, it's probably the weakest because it doesn't really benefit from all these elemental reactions going on. The only thing that it generates is defensive shields. And I think with this buff, it just makes Zhongli the perfect support for a geo-centric team, because you're able to do this essentially damage over time as long as you have multiple geo characters on the field at the same time and able to pull off a combination of geo constructs to get a resonance damage off of his skill. So this is probably one of the more impactful changes from a gameplay perspective, and it's great at promoting that geo-centric gameplay that we have been looking for quite a while.
That's absolutely right, and I actually want to add one more point to that, which is you mentioned Geo being a bad standalone element, but I would actually make the argument that before these changes, Geo was a bad element to put in teams with other elements as well because of the way Crystallize works. You're stealing reactions from your actual other elemental carries, and thus lowering the overall team's damage. Now there are going to be changes to Geo Resonance, so that when you have 2 Geo in a team, you get a Geo Resonance, and they have made some adjustments to that, but that's going to be something that's at the end of these notes, so at the end of this video. Let's move on for now into the next change. So adjustment number 2 is to Dominus Lapidus' holding mode. The original effect causes nearby Geo energy to explode, causing the following effect. Creates a Shield of Jade where the shield's damage absorption scales off Zhongli's max HP and has 250% Geo damage absorption, and it deals AoE Geo damage. If there's nearby targets with the Geo element, it drains a large amount of that element from a maximum of 2 such targets, and this effect does not cause damage. Now the post-adjustment effect causes nearby Geo energy to explode, causing the following effects. If the maximum number of stone pillars has not yet been reached, it will create a new pillar. And we could see this in the images below. Number 1 on the left, you could see he's using his shield and the pillar pops up along with his shield. And on the right, image number 2, he just shields, and this is what we currently have. Nothing pops up, there's no pillar. And I think this helps address one very fundamental issue that we pointed out in our Zhongli solutions video, which is the anti-synergy in his kit. Zhongli before, he had to choose between using the pillar to get energy regen, or using the shield for survivability. So it seems like the devs have picked up on this. They realized it kind of didn't really make sense for him to choose to be one or the other, considering they want him to be a support role. So now they've made it so that the optimal play is definitely just to enter a fight and just start shielding because you get the free pillar anyways. And I think this is a great change, and probably one of the bigger ones for Zhongli specifically out of all of these buffs. Now Zhongli's shield not only comes with a free pillar, but they've also made another adjustment where it has 150% physical damage and elemental damage absorption instead of the 250% geo damage absorption. And we think this is an amazing change, because first of all, if we really think about it in terms of a practical sense, there's not that many enemies out in the world or in domains or in Abyss where you're going to be taking so much geo damage you're like, wow, I really wish I had 250% geo damage absorption. However, you do take a lot of damage from other elements, you do take a lot of physical damage from enemies in general, and so that's why even though 150% absorption against everything might seem like a nerf from the 250% Geo, we actually think this is a pretty significant buff to making Geo more viable as an element in all types of content. And finally, at the very bottom of this list, we have an adjustment that will also greatly increase the interruption resistance of Dominus Lapidus holding mode. So when you're in that 2-second casting time throwing out your shield, before you could get hit by an attack, it could get interrupted and then your shield wouldn't come out, which is obviously bad because you took damage and you lost the mitigation. But now even if you do get hit, the interruption resistance will hopefully be enough that you get the shield off anyways, so it's not a complete waste. And we think this is just a nice quality of life change, not really a huge buff, it's more of a fix. And now we've gotten to the end of the Zhongli specific changes, so why don't we wrap this portion of the video up with a quick discussion about how we think they'll affect Zhongli holistically.
Alright, so as we've seen so far, Zhongli has got a plethora of different changes, small to big. Overall, there are two types of changes in my opinion, right? There's the attack buff from a lot of his skills now are able to scale off HP, which is great. But in our opinion, again, that's not the main focus of Zhongli. When Zhongli first came out, Mihoyo made the announcement that he is intended to be played as a support. And many of us has tried that and couldn't get the result that we wanted. However, with all these new changes, we think it's really a step in the right direction because now, in our opinion, Zhongli becomes the quintessential Geo support. Not only just a support for the general gameplay, but support specifically designed for people to run a Geo-centric team, for you to go into dungeons with multiple players all running Geo characters. And this is especially important because currently there are not that many great Geo characters in the game. Right? The most noticeable character in the game, and the most popular one, is probably Ningguang. However, as we know, going forward we'll be getting more, namely Albedo will be coming out pretty soon, so there are going to be more options going forward. And I think a lot of the changes that has been made to Zhongli really addresses some of the issue that has been fundamentally plaguing the Geo characters in general. And now, it's pretty exciting to see how this will shake out going forward. And for all of us out there who are Geo enthusiasts, now it's the time to pull out your Geo characters from the vault and try them out. But that's not all the changes in this current note. There are actually a couple of Geo elemental mechanics that has been updated as well, so why don't we take a look at that?
Sure, so regarding Geo elemental mechanics, the first adjustment is to Geo Resonance Enduring Rock. And the way this works is if you have 2 or more Geo characters on your team, you will get this resonance just automatically. Now, the original effect was increase resistance to interruption, and when protected by a shield, increase attack damage by 15%. Now, this was actually regarded as a pretty good resonance, even before these changes, because 15% attack damage is quite significant, and increased resistance to interruption is great too. But the thing is, it was bogged down by the fact that it was a Geo resonance, and Geo just wasn't a good element. So some post-adjustment effects have been made to remedy this. Now, you're increasing shield strength by 15%, which is great because obviously Geo generates crystallized shields, as well as Geo characters like Zhongli creating shields for themselves. Additionally, characters protected by a shield will have the following characteristics. Damage dealt increased by 15%, dealing damage to enemies will decrease their Geo resistance by 20% for 15 seconds. And now, if you've played with Geo characters before, you know this is a godsend for Ningguang specifically, and potentially Geo MC as well. And we don't know how Albedo works exactly, but it's probably going to be great for him too. Now moving on to the second change is Geo Shield balance adjustments. Geo Shields are adjusted from having 250% Geo damage absorption to having 150% physical damage and elemental damage absorption. Affected shields include Geo Shields created by Zhongli's elemental skill, Geo Shields created by Noelle's elemental skill, and Geo Shields created when picking up Geo Crystals dropped by Geo Bishop hatchlings. So this is actually something that we touched on earlier on when talking about Zhongli's shield specifically, and it seems like this is just applied to Geo Shields in general, which I think is huge. Because as we mentioned earlier, there's not an instance in the game currently where you're like, oh my god, I wish I had 250% Geo damage absorption. But there are plenty of instances where you wish you had a little bit tankier of a shield against all damage, which is essentially what this change makes it. And overall, what we think these changes round out to is, as Hao and I had mentioned earlier on in the video, Mihoyo seems to be looking at Geo as this sort of self-sufficient element, this element that wants to run with more Geo, right? You want 2-man Geo teams, you want 4-man Geo teams, where they can build constructs. Zhongli puts down his pillar, you're getting roughly 2% max health damage per tick off every construct, and then you have Ningguang there, her Geo damage from her auto attacks is being boosted by 20% from the resonance, and then the shields are tankier, so everybody's picking up crystallize and they're not taking as much damage. Zhongli's petrifying enemies, you have Geo MC increasing crit rate and creating a lot of structures as well, and then Albedo's going to come out soon. He's obviously going to be a great addition as the next Geo 5-star. And we think that there's a lot of room for potential and a lot of room for growth for Geo to become more well-rounded and more well-balanced in its own circles. Because right now, obviously, Pyro is by far the strongest element, and there are a couple of other ones that seem a little bit weak. Electro reactions are weak, Hydro resonance is weak, but Geo was the worst by a fair margin. And we think that these changes help bring it up a notch and keep it maybe a little bit more balanced with the rest of them, which is something we love to see. And we think it's great that Mihoyo has taken this time and this community outrage and reacted to it in a relatively appropriate way. So they took him back into beta for 1.3, and that's where these tentative changes, let's mention that once again, these are not final, these are just what they're running with him right now, testing it out in the servers. They could get more feedback and you could see some of these things removed, you could see some new things added. Ultimately, it's just heartening to see that they've made changes. They recognize Geo has problems, they recognize Zhongli has problems, and now they're working to address those. So ultimately, these changes give us a lot of hope for Zhongli and for the Geo element as a whole. We're really enjoying these ideas that Mihoyo has proposed as potential buffs, and moreover, we hope that you enjoyed watching this video. So if you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. We will have more Exo Heroes and Genshin Impact content coming out, especially once these changes come live so we can actually test out Zhongli and give you guys our opinion on how the changes affected him. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.